2. You got Scales sitting at 11-1. You got Nick Gill 11-0-1. Still no losses here for the Red White Aggro player. Red White Aggro for another Standard Open. The most played deck in day number 2. 13 copies among the 121 players in day 2 here of Los Angeles. Also have Hobbs on Aggro with 13 copies. Just Guy Heroic? Well, there's just one of those.
Yes.
That is Zach Scales. No.
Excuse me.
That is Zach Scales. Yes. Winsguard Crag will bring Gil up to 21. It's a flooded strand. Scales going to go down to 19. Surge up a Plains, which means the favorite hot plate's on the way, and that's how things will start here in round number 13.
It's confusing because Ivan Jen is also sort of playing a Jeskai heroic deck of sorts.
He is.
Just a much different one.
Yes. So we'll see what Gil can put together on his second turn of the game. Of course, the goal when playing against Heroic is keep the Heroic creatures off the board to the best you can. So something like a Wild Slash or, hey, a Chain to the Rocks. That'll work just fine.
And this is part of the reason that Red White Aggro is so good in this matchup. Access to Wild Slash, Chain of the Rocks, lot cheap removal, and that's the recipe you need.
There's a Manic Influence. Does have a copy of Hero Iros in hand, does Scales. He will deploy that. Have to take one to do so. Manic Influence, of course, in the deck to be able to facilitate, the red splash in this deck.
And just to be an untapped dual land, this deck often plays Mana Confluence in some numbers, even in just the white-blue versions.
It's a Goblin Rabble Master. A Goblin token will be on the way. It'll run into Hero of Iros, most likely, and we'll pass the turn back, saving each other a little bit of time.
Were Adhikar waste legal, I'm sure this deck would play 4 copies.
400.
For fewer than 400.
I think it would play as many as it could.
The Battle of Wits version of the deck might go up to 400, but...
When are we going to get Adhikar Waste and Brushland and those guys back? Probably at some point.
Probably the earliest you would see that is after Khans rotates out. Would be my guess.
Man, would be too good then.
Well, just overlapping duels.
Sure.
You know.
Another copy of Hero of Iros. Gil will play his 4th land. There is an Ash Cloud Phoenix going to the skies. Make a Goblin and run it in. Would you like to block? I would. Pass the turn back.
I appreciate Nick's honesty. Just already ready to throw it off the table.
Yeah, I like that. Who are we even trying to fool?
Right. Not tanking and then making attack with the Goblin. We all know what's going on here. Let's just move it along. Ash Cloud Phoenix was the card I was anticipating seeing more copies of because of the Green Devotion Surge.
Me too.
Just flyers in general are so good against that deck.
Scales just has to pass the turn back here. Does have a copy of Ordeal of Thassa in hand, but just refusing to cast it at this point. Doesn't want to put his shields down.
Maybe interested in having a turn of, say, blocking, playing some spells to grow up one of the heroes, and try to get Ordeal of Thassa online in 1 turn.
Here's 3 mana. Another copy of Goblin Rabble Master. That Goblin Rabble Master will force the other Goblin Rabble Master to attack. So here comes everybody. There's a block. Here's a block. Perhaps a spell like Feat of Resistance here, we'll see. That's what it is.
Willing to risk a potential Wild Slash here?
Yeah, I mean, always scary that can work its way into the equation. Taking a look at Gil's deck list, however, no main deck copies of that card.
Well, he also just doesn't have much of a choice.
Sure.
He has to spend his mana this turn doing something.
With the way that he's been playing the game, by not willing to cast anything on his own turn. We're going to go back Scales' way. Scales at 11. The damage from that Manic Influence starting to add up a little bit here. So when is he going to turn the corner? His Manic Influence was his draw for the turn.
You almost get the vibe this is a Teamer Battle Rage sort of game because Zach is just not going to be able to cast enough spells otherwise.
He's got to take 1 to play the Ordeal of Thassa. And it's time to get in the red zone. The question is with how much stuff. At least it feels like it's time to get in the red zone.
Ordeal of Heliod is the other big card for Zach in this game. He can't answer the board, but he can gain 10.
Yep. 10 is very important right now. So this is an attack for 6. Gil's going to go down to 15. Is there a good follow-up here for Scales?
And I don't see Ordeal of Heliod or Teamer Battle Rage in hand right now.
Not yet.
And Zach does not have a lot of time left.
There's a Temple, top card. Becomes the bottom card. There's the mighty Laguna Band Trailblazer and a passing of the turn.
And every time a heroic deck taps out, the other person goes, okay.
Yep.
Have a turn to just cast myself and not think about it.
Rabble Master number 2. Couple goblins, everybody's coming in. There's some blocking to be done here.
And this sets it up so next turn, Ash Cloud Phoenix is lethal no matter what.
Yep. See some blocks here. This will be a little interesting. This will trade. There's a little bounce action there. Some damage will be dealt. Seeker of the Way. Battlefield Forge is the last card in Gil's hand, deciding if he wants to play it or not. He's just going to pass the turn back. So Zach Scales is in need of a Teamer Battle Rage here, I believe. Flooded Strand was the draw. Got quite a few lands now. Battle-wise Hoplite.
Even Teamer Battle Rage doesn't necessarily get the job done, depending on how Nick blocks. But that's got to be the starting point here. Or Ordeal of Heliod is still live this turn. But if Zach has neither, I think he's done.
He was having some mana issues at the beginning of the game, and I think most of his draw steps were lands afterward. Yeah, and he knows he's beat. He's just going to concede the game because he can't beat the flyer.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to cast any more spells, and he's not going to. So Nick Gill's going to win game number 1 here over Zach Scales. Red-White Aggro. Very quickly up a game over Jeskai Heroic. We mentioned it would probably be a pretty quick match between these two players, 2 aggressive decks. So we'll take a look at the sideboard, and we will start with Zach Scales.
A Treasure Cruise, 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 2 Stubborn Denials, 2 Glare of Heresy, 2 copies of Erase, 2 Valorous Stands, an Ordeal of Heliod, an Ajani's Presence, and a Plains. Like Ajani's Presence, Ordeal of Heliod, Valorous Stance, and Glare of Heresy. Pretty simple stuff.
Other side of things, I got 2 Magma Sprays, I got a Glare of Heresy, I got Knobs on Advantage, 2 Valerius Stance, 1 Master of the Unseen, 3 Arc Lightnings, 2 Hushwing Gryphs, a Challenger Pyro Master, and 2 copies of Sarkin the Dragon Speaker.
Glare of Heresy I like. Magma Sprays I like, though you're going to have too much of that kind of effect. 2 copies of Valorous Stance. That's about it. Not a lot of heavy sideboarding here. I think removal spells like Arc Lightning, Sarkin, they're too slow, too cumbersome to get the job done.
This is kind of weird, too. You know, like they're good in some spots, pretty bad in others.
Most of the removal that's good against Heroic is either 1 mana or kills anything no matter what. Anytime it's something like Lightning Strike or Bioblight, those cards are fine. You don't cut them in the matchup. If you have them in your sideboard, you're probably bringing them in, but there's no promise they're going to do anything. Magma Spray, very good. Very cheap, very efficient, good for the job.
Always going to interact for the most. I mean, it's exactly where you want it.
Yeah. Valorous Stance, also. Something gets big, you can still interact with it. Chain of the Rocks, great for the same reason, but the sort of expensive damage or toughness-based removal is a little dodgy.
And you never really like bringing in those kind of erase/obs on advantage effects against this deck, I don't think.
They just don't work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's spots where they work, but for the most part, they don't work. You have to get an Ordeal before they enter combat. That's the spot where it can be okay. And even then, they still get a heroic trigger out of it.
Yeah, that window's very, very small.
Yeah.
Well, both players will shuffle up here for game number 2. We will talk about Cardboard Crack. 4 great books available at Star City Games.
The response to the first 3 was so great that we've already come out with a 4th. The Black and White Magic the Gathering themed comic strip available. 4 different paperback books, $12.99 a piece. StarCityGames.com/cardboardcrack to order your copies today.
Spoiler alert. There's probably a 5th one coming. Just small spoiler.
Yep.
I don't even know if that's true, but I've got a feeling. A little inside information. There's probably another one coming.
Would stand to reason.
They wouldn't have made a 4th one.
The creator is pretty prolific. There's a lot of comic strips coming out all the time. The books are very well received. I see no reason to let up.
I just don't. I don't have it in me to make a comic strip. That seems like it's hard work.
Yeah. And I have negative artistic skills when it comes to drawing.
Yeah, me too. I'm really bad. Really bad. We were supposed to have a draw-off at some point, see who was worse.
I don't think it's even close. I don't think it's even close.
You're giving me a lot of credit.
I'll try to find you some of my artistic renderings, but
Was that the class in elementary school you didn't want to go to? Art? Not the
art was really high on the list. Home economics, shop, basically anything involving working with my hands. I was
Okay.
pretty bad with.
I loved home ec because I love cooking.
Okay.
I'm terrible at knitting, though. Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
I don't know anyone does that.
Well, that was the thing. I didn't want to make a stink out of it. It felt like a skill with low utility in modern American society.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was really bad at that. I remember my knitting project. You know what I knit?
What?
A deck box.
Pretty good.
Dumbest
does
idea ever.
Well, it doesn't seem sturdy enough.
No,
but
not even close.
at least you tried to make something with some utility, just something.
I tried to knit a deck box. It was really bad. And shop. Who? Come on, really? Shop? I had shop. Horrible at it.
Yeah. And of course, my father, a car salesman. My sister actually quite handy, so this was quite embarrassing to the family.
I also just don't think they should be giving kids saws at like 16 years of age.
Yeah, I mean, there's some risks
That's
there.
just a really bad idea. Both players start off with a land here. There's a Temple of Enlightenment for Scales. He'll scry. Top card going to stay on top. Favorite hoplite in the hand, too. You're just going to pass the turn back.
Yep, trying to play something with protection.
There's Battlefield Forge. Pass the turn back. Will gild 2 Scales. There's a favorite hoplite. Let's see exactly what this is. That's Magma Spray, a card we had a feeling was going to come in. And he'll be using a Defiant Strike on this one. Defiant Strike does a nice job of countering that. Lets him save God's Willing, too, so that's a nice interaction.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, gets to draw a card, pushes it out of further range of various shock effects, draws a card, no God's Willing used. Great turn.
Chain of the Rocks is going to take care of the favorite hoplite, however. Pass that turn back over to Scales. Scales will draw. He's looking for land number 3, preferably untapped, so he can play Hero of Iroas with God's Willing Protection. It's going to enter the battlefield going to enter the battlefield tapped. Will the Temple, and he will deploy the hero anyway. Here's 3 mana. Rabble Master or Hordling Outburst. Let's say Hordling Outburst. 3 Goblin tokens. Pass the turn back over to Scales.
Sitting on a hand with a lot of removal.
There's an Ordeal of Thassa. Trigger Heroic, 3/3. See Scales hand, a lot of protection. 2 God's Willing and a Feeder Resistance in hand. Little choked on mana right now, though.
And he would really like to fire off this ordeal this turn. Hunt for some more lands.
There's your trigger. So 1 counter away. Could have gotten a little aggressive there if he wanted to use a God's Willing to maybe make that happen.
I think that the God's Willing in this matchup is so important, especially against a deck with as much cheap removal as Red White Aggro has, that Zach is going to clutch onto those at all costs.
There's the attack for 3. Here's a Plains. That's a Seeker of the Way and a passing of the turn. We go back Scales' way. Scales will draw. Looks like another copy of God's Willing. He's got all the protection. Valor Stance. Gonna go after the hero. God's Willing. Not gonna let that happen. Trigger Heroic, protection from white, of course, which means his creature will get through the Seeker of the Way as well. Now it's time to attack, which means a counter and 2 cards coming Scales' way. A land wouldn't be shabby here.
Yep. Heroic decks get into this weird spot where they obviously operate on low resources, but they do want to hit a healthy number of land drops because they want to be able to cast stuff and protect things.
Favorite hoplite's not bad either. The draws of Plains here for Gil. Does have a Stormbreath Dragon in hand, also a copy of Goblin Rabble Master. Had a lot of interaction to start, but it looks like he's on empty as far as interaction is concerned.
I mean, he does have the option here of casting Storm Breath and either holding back on defense and hope that protection from white really mucks up Zach's plans, or go on the offensive and hope the tokens can hold off the creatures long enough for Storm Breath to get the job done.
So land number 5. Looks like he is going to go the dragon route. There's a Storm Breath Dragon.
And you can see Nick is really taking over this because the Storm Breath on offense and on defense both have different, it's different pros and cons.
Well, he's made his decision.
I like going on the offensive here. Holding back on defense is not giving the heroic deck that much respect.
There's an upkeep copy of God's Willing. This allows Scales to trigger heroic and also scry before he draws a card for the turn. So that's done resolving. He'll draw a card. Now he'll play another God's Willing. First one was on red, second one's on right. That means no blocks allowed. That means we're going to head to a third game. Zach Scales able to tie it up here against Nick Gill. Jeskai Heroic and Red White Aggro will be heading to a third game here. Importantly here for Gill, he gets to go first, which is exactly where the Red White Aggro deck likes to be.
It's especially important for the red decks to be on the play against Heroic because that gives your Magma Sprays, your Wild Slashes, your Lightning Strikes the best opportunity to do something. When you're on the draw, those cards become a liability a good percentage of the time.
Interesting to see what Nick wants to change given that he's on the play this game, because he's obviously bringing some cards out right now, like very, very quickly. So he must have a configuration that he wants to have on the play against Zach.
Yeah.
Not sure what that is and what that will be, but some cards are going to move in and out here. We'll talk very quickly about the complete commander here from Benny Smith. Been writing for Star City maybe longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, I know. He goes all the way back to the very beginnings of the website. He's been writing about casual Magic in all of its forms since the early 2000s or late 90s. He goes all the way back.
Yeah.
And Commander, obviously a format he's very passionate about, very well qualified to write the complete Commander and an unofficial guide to the Commander format, updated for 2014 and available on PDF at starcitygames.com/complete commander.
I think almost certainly has to be the longest tenured writer in Star City history.
From, you mean longest tenured continuous writer?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
I've been there since day one. He may have helped build the game center, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, he's from Virginia, I believe.
Yeah, Richmond area.
Former Virginia State champion.
Yes, sir.
Some real Star City roots.
He's been dabbling around with some of the new cards from Fate Reforged. She'll have some new cards to work with soon here, too, a Dragon's Dark here. Presumably quite a few dragons.
Yeah.
That will be commanders here. Now, I don't know if any of those commanders will cost 3 or less for tiny leaders. That seems unlikely, but there'll be some new commander material, I think, from Dragon's Dark here.
Potentially some new Stone Reigns for Tiny Commander as well.
I don't think that's going to happen.
It's just great that Commander exists as a format because when everyone is super competitive, people kind of view the new cards through the same paradigm. What's powerful in Standard right now? What could be good in Modern? Whatever. Commander allows an entire different section of your card pool to be exciting or to be cause for speculation among a different class of your player base. It's very cool to have the game be able to be interpreted different ways by different people who explore the card pool in different ways.
Yeah, I like that. And, Cube is another one, too.
Exactly.
Where it's explored a little bit differently. I still think Cube has, like, this competitive edge to it, but there's also some crazy cubes out there, too. There are common cubes and uncommon cubes. And
the explicitly low-powered cubes.
Yeah.
Like, find all of the horrible cards in Magic's history and build a cube out of them.
Popper cubes or stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways you can go, which makes it really fun.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for creative expression. And, that's one of the greatest things about Magic. It's something that falls to the wayside a little bit when you start talking about competitive play because you just kind of have to play with what you think is good.
Yeah.
But some of those different casual formats, they can even tilt pretty competitively, but it gives people a lot more room to express themselves creatively, which is sweet.
I actually think I'm going to build a cube.
You're going to build a cube?
Yeah.
That's quite the undertaking.
It is. It really is. And I have to make the decision on, what kind of cards do you want for the cube? Do you just want normal cards? Do you want foil cards? Do you want alternate language cards?
So this is my only piece of advice. I've never built a cube myself. I've played a fair number of them.
Okay.
I've watched people, the process for them to build a cube. Fight the urge to just put all of the most powerful cards in a cube. I think a lot of competitive players start in that place. Does not necessarily make for the most fun experience.
Okay. I'm not like a big fan of like powered cubes. Like I don't find those to be very fun.
Well, I think that powered cubes, Moxes and Lotus, that's kind of a different experience. But a lot of people just default to, let's find all the most powerful cards that I happen to own, or historically powerful constructed Magic cards and put them in a cube together does not necessarily make for the best experience.
Zach going to take a mulligan here. Nick going to keep his starting 7 pretty quickly. Yeah, there is no guideline. You know, there's no way to build a cube. Like, I understand what you're saying. That's what makes it tough.
Yep.
Is that there is no thing that says this is the way that you do it. But that's also what makes it cool too. Is that there's no perfect way or to go about doing it.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, I understand what you're saying because it is kind of lame then at that point a little bit. It just gets old fast.
Yeah, it gets old fast. You open up a pack where all the cards appear to be roughly the same power level. It's just not that. It's not that compelling of an experience. And what's fun about Booster Draft is often trying to find a way to make lemonade out of some lemons. You know, that part of the exploration is really fun. You can have that in Cube too. Narrow sideboard cards, or maybe this card fits into a particular strategy, but otherwise doesn't get played. You don't want too much of that going on as well, but a little of that adds a lot of texture to the experience.
So you can have some themes in the cube.
Yep.
I know some players like that, like a storm deck in their cube or a combo deck. See, for you, I could fit a land destruction deck in the cube.
Yep.
There would be some really powerful cards, you know, like, I don't know, Storm Breath Dragon, some other stuff, and then, hey, we'll just throw a Boom Bust in there.
Avalanche Riders.
Yep.
Orcus Settlers. Ravenous Baboons.
Seismic Mage.
Seismic Mage is a truly atrocious Magic design. What's a card that's really fun? What's a card that's really fun to cast every turn? Is it Magic has had a pretty dubious. Just wow, is that not fun? It's low powered, so it's relatively harmless. Kind of a weird angle going on in the picture. Set that aside, but. You know what happens? What often happens when this thing doesn't get killed and you Stone Rain them? Your opponent's less likely to be able to kill this the next turn because they're down to land, and then they'll land every other turn. Flowstone Flood. Have you seen this one?
I have not seen Flowstone Flood. We'll take a look.
All right, so the design goal is let's make Stone Rain with buyback. Probably a pretty dubious starting point, right? So let's figure out the negative costing we can put on this that maybe it only shows up a little bit. So to pay 3 life and discard a card at random. And you know what? This card was reasonably powerful. It showed up in sideboards. Because some decks can't beat this.
This is actually the first time I've ever seen this card.
Destructive Urge. Enchanted creature becomes Stone Rain when it connects. Another pretty horrible design.
The Flowstone Flood, that's a great picture, though.
Right.
They're running from the Flowstone. So it's like a mudslide.
They're running and trying to find a different game to play.
A Laguna Van Trailblazer will start things off for Scales. He's unfortunately on mulligan to 5 here. Unless you're Nick Gill, then you're probably pretty happy as he has a Seeker of the Way. Zach will draw a card. A Temple of Enlightenment. Take a look at the top card. Having an 0-4 to start's not the worst place to be against an aggressive deck.
It's great. I mean, this sort of forces Nick to have Chain of the Rocks and a Mountain because his burn doesn't really work.
Right now, no Mountain.
And that's what I said about you can have too much of this kind of effect in your deck. Part of the reason that things like Chain of the Rocks and Valorous stance are so important because you need to be able to catch the big stuff. It's not just about tempoing out the little stuff because sometimes the heroic player plays in such a way where they play a little thing with God's Willing backup, and it's very hard to use lightning strikes and so forth.
Saw Seeker of the Way get in there. Scales declined to block. I would have snapped him off.
Yeah.
2-2 and an 0-4. I don't think so, buddy. Mostly because I'm on camera. You're not going to get me with that nonsense. There's a Soulfire Grandmaster passing of the turn. He didn't have it, Zach.
I'd rather lose than not block.
That's right.
Sometimes it's about standing up for principles.
Plains is land number 3 here for Scales. You can see it because it's disgusting and white bordered.
Yep. Probably Joe loaned him his cards after Joe failed to make day 2. That's my guess.
Think so?
Zach probably asked for the power of the lands from an open series winning deck.
Makes sense.
Or they just share the same problem. In which case it's actually kind of sad.
There is that Plains. I was just trying to figure out what aura he wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
He has Ordeal of Heliod and Thassa in hand. Looks like he's going to go with Ordeal of Heliod, trigger, follow-up. Aqueous form. Perhaps we're going to take an aggressive approach or play a little defense. Oh, we're getting aggro. I like it.
We're going to gain 10 here. We're going to make this thing unblockable, and we are going to try to go to town.
All right.
Zach with no protection effect in his hand, so he's giving it his best shot to win, which is maybe Nick can't answer this. Maybe he has Chain of the Rocks in his hand, never draws a mountain. I think Valorous Stance, unfortunately, is going to do quite a bit of damage here to Zach.
It's actually interesting because he's like hoping that there's a certain subset of cards that Nick doesn't have. The Mountain for Chain of the Rocks. You know, hoping that he doesn't have Valorous Stance, hoping that maybe his hand is, you know, Stoke the Flames, Wild Slash, Magma Spray, a bunch of cards that don't get the job done. Unfortunately, here for Scales, he does have Valorous Stance. Valorous Stance is going to take care of the creature. Scales is going to go from 27 down a little bit lower. Also, Gil's going to gain some life on the exchange. So it was a good attempt.
Listen, sometimes your hand just is what it is. It's nice to try to play around everything, but sometimes you got to say, my hand's creatures and creature enchantments. I have no protection effect. I'm under some amount of duress here. I'm starting to get attacked. There's a good chance Nick can't kill this, and I've got a really good shot of winning if he can't. As it turns out, he could, and now Zach's way behind, but I think it's a good risk.
Couple of creatures here in favored Hoplite and Hero of Heroes. There's a Hordeling Outburst. That'll trigger the Seeker. It's a 3/3 with lifelink now. Looks like it wants to come into the red zone. Both creatures do.
Interesting to see Nick willing to offer up the Soulfire Grandmaster there. With Stoke the Flames in play, we actually might see the combo we all thought was going to be a big part of Standard.
The old loop-de-loop.
Yeah. Just drain for 4, just Soul Feast with buyback someone out of the game.
No card like that in Exodus, right?
Like, with drain with buyback? Probably.
No Soul Feast, though. I think there was one that dealt
Destiny.
2.
Destiny's in Soul Feast. Versus Destiny and Soul Feast.
I know there's one that dealt 2. Obviously a black card.
With buyback.
With buyback. It's escaping me. I'm sure Twitter knows.
Buyback's a pretty sketchy mechanic.
Maybe they should bring that one back?
No.
No.
You know what's typically not fun, just as a guideline? The same card getting cast over and over again.
Depends on what the card is.
Well, some of them were Stone Rain and Counterspell, or Bounce a Permanent. Those are pretty rough to have cast.
Those ones aren't great. Those ones aren't great. But some of them I could see being okay.
Another good lesson. Some things are fine to have cast once a game, but they're not fine to have cast every turn. The difference between Unsummon and Boomerang versus Capsize or Chase the Mind Sculptor, very different in the level of frustration.
Also true.
Lots of good lessons.
You learn a lot in game design.
You do.
Let's see what we have here. Perhaps it is time to demonstrate the loop. Nick setting some mana aside. There's a Goblin Rabble Master. Looks like the answer to our question was Soul Siphon.
Okay. I've really been happy with Nick's play in this match. Definitely has a very solid understanding of what's going on.
Well, I don't think it's much of a surprise that he's 11-0-1.
Yeah. His play's been very sharp.
Yeah. Soul Siphon was a lie. That's not a magic card. I just got got.
Okay.
You can't trust anybody anymore on the internet.
Soul Siphon, I thought that was a card from Onslaught where it drained each other player for 2.
I think so.
It's a multiplayer one.
You know, you try to trust people on Twitter and then they burn you.
This is the risk with just using random people. It's less reliable. I mean, you get made fun of all the time if you say, oh, you know, I looked it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Someone on Twitter is way more random than Wikipedia.
It's true.
Wikipedia has editors. Ostensibly, people fact check. Twitter, man, people just post whatever.
I would call this person out, but his name is not pronounceable.
There we go. Evan Carr's Justice.
Boom, that's what we were looking for. Buyback of 3. 7 mana, drain.
This is both more expensive to cast and to buy back than Capsize.
One of those cards is better than the other.
I mean, I guess it's a recurring Pyroclasm. That's pretty frustrating too. Who knows? Whatever. A lot of bad designs in Tempest. Not worth getting too hung up on it.
Here are the attackers. Rabble Master going to work. Soulfire Grandmaster looking to go to work soon.
Hey, Nick has the loop established now. 2 untapped creatures with 6 mana. He can stoke and get it back.
Something we've been waiting for all this time.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a bigger part of standard. Got to be honest with you.
But the one Soulfire Grandmaster in Nick Gill's deck, giving him the inevitability right now in this game. Scales is going to try to figure out if there's anything he can do to work his way out of this situation. He'll block there. Does have 2 copies of Teamer Battle Rage in hand. And he's going to have to make a move here before anything happens. So there is Teamer Battle Rage. He'll have to take 1 to cast it. It'll go after the hero, which means his creature will get double strike, hoping that Gill has nothing.
Well, yeah, I think this is a pretty good spot for Nick to try to stoke with buyback, but it looks like at this point he's just committed to going at Zach's face with it.
All right.
Not really worth answering the board.
There's a temple. Top card stays on top. Gill passes turn back. Stubborn Denial to draw. Makes things a little interesting.
It's not shabby. Lets him at least counter something. The problem is that he's losing to the board right now.
Yeah, that's the big issue.
But you can tell it's a little bit of hope from Zach's side. Is there a way for me to hold off on the ground, leave up a counter spell, and get in enough shots where Teamer Battle Rage could be lethal? There's at least a hope now that Zach could pull this off.
Teamer Battle Rage always giving outs. I like that aspect of that card.
Yeah.
It's a way to steal a game.
And it's so important for Zach to try to get in the shots that he can to make it so Teamer Battle Rage is a kill if he's able to hold off the ground and set it up.
Oh, there's attack with the hero. 3 damage will come across. Gill, no interest in blocking. No interest in doing much of anything right now, it seems. Activate the ability and cast Stoke the Flames. No, sir. Stubborn Denial. The dream.
We
the dream
almost
is
saw
dead.
it.
Yeah.
Almost.
Time to draw for Gill. Nick trying to figure out if he can just win this turn. He's pretty close. There's another Rabble Master. That might help. That'll bring 2 Goblin tokens along with it. They all have to attack, of course, as does the actual Goblin Rabble Master. So if you block the Rabble Master, 8 points of damage to be coming through.
You know what? If Nick missed this turn, if he didn't draw something that mattered, Zach might have won the following turn. I think this might be exact lethal now.
Yeah, and that's going to do it. Nick Gill is going to win this match here over Zach Scales, 2-1. Red-White Aggro moves on to 12-0-1. You can lock up a top 8 berth for that man.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, even with 2 losses, he should be good to go. Zach's still in a fine position to top 8 as well. And Teamer Battle Rage, we've seen it kill some people out of nowhere. And even in a losing effort from Zach's side of the table, you had to appreciate how close he got, given how he mulliganed to 5 and got rocked the whole game. Was almost able to steal it there.
So Zach Scales moves down to 11-2 with Joe Lissette's build, let's say influence. Just Guy Heroic, those two are very good friends. But Nick Gill with Red White Aggro, the most played deck here in day 2 yet again here in the Standard Open Series event, moves on to 12-0-1. He can lose twice to make the top 8. So we've punched 1 ticket to elimination rounds.
And we might be looking at a